Okay, it's a hailstorm right here.
When you're out paddling, relatively calm conditions on the water can change very quickly from nice and cozy paddle waters to a potentially really dangerous situation. My name is Patrick, I'm an active paddler and an on-water safety advocate. And for me and other paddlers, yesterday's sea kayaking trip out on archipelago seawater was a really good example of that actually. And in this video I'd like to try and discuss and showcase how quickly things can change and how important it is to be aware, prepared and to check weather conditions before you go out for a paddle. As a paddler out on the water, regardless of whether you paddle a kayak, canoe or stand-up paddleboard, a pack raft or whatever it might be, you can have so much fun. And most paddles are of course often really enjoyable. Things could look great and relaxed on the water, but wind and weather conditions can change rapidly, sometimes not just in an hour or half an hour, but in minutes. So there are some things to think about, particularly if you're paddling on open water of any kind. Yesterday's group paddling trip was, as I mentioned, actually a really good example of how things can escalate. And the changing weather during this day was particularly appropriate as we were actually actors in a large search and rescue exercise on seawater. More on this in other videos to follow here on the channel. We were supposed to end up scattered in different locations, separated by a storm. The weather forecast for yesterday included winds up to 12 meters per second and up to as much as 20 meters per second in gusts of wind. And while we had somewhat calmer weather than that for the most part, conditions still made for a very good backdrop for the exercise, including heavy rain and even hail, which is rather unusual here. And I think this makes for a good backdrop to discuss paddle safety and how important it is to always be prepared for that the weather really can change from calm to dangerous quickly. Beyond the very basics, such as always wearing a PFD, having basic safety gear with you, a phone in a waterproof pouch, so you know you can call for help if needed, and such, it's also really important to check weather forecasts before you go out and be adequately prepared for weather that might be worse than you expect it to be, actually. Even a sunny day can turn rough in a matter of minutes, as you've probably experienced many times. I certainly have, out on the water. Those who are subscribers here on the Air on the Water channel, and thank you guys by the way for your interest and support, which I really appreciate, know that paddling safety is an important topic to me and something I like to regularly highlight both here and in a Facebook group called Paddling Safety that I'd recommend to join if you're interested in this topic.
Det haglar va, eller? Okay, it's a hailstorm right here.
My interest in this goes back to actually having been a professional in emergency response and working with safety and preparedness for many years, but it's also just good sense being a paddler, I think, for everybody. In all cases, there are a few key safety principles to always take into account when you go paddling, especially on unfamiliar waters. First, check weather forecasts for the area. Wind, any expected rain, snow, hail, thunder, etc. should of course be taken into account for your paddle plan. Be mindful of expected air temperature and more importantly, water temperature if you're in cold water conditions. And remember, the weather changes as the day goes on. Second, adjust your route according to expected conditions, your and other paddlers' capability and experience. It always makes good sense to consider where you can get shelter from the wind from land and to make sure your paddle trip, to the extent possible, doesn't end heading back against wind or tide for a long time, which might be both tiring and difficult. If you're stand-up paddleboarding or in a kayak that's particularly vulnerable to wind, this is even more important, as it can prove really hard or even impossible to get back to land if you have the wind and waves and maybe strong tide against you. This is one way many paddlers unfortunately have ended up in life-threatening situations, often by not thinking ahead, particularly on large lakes or on coastal waters. Third, be prepared with proper safety gear. You guys know I talk about this a lot. I leave a link here to a video showing extensive information on that if you'd like to know more. And paddle within the bounds of your capacity and experience. I'd recommend that you should always be prepared for conditions that are a bit rougher than the weather that you're actually expecting to encounter during your paddle. The weather forecast could always be wrong, waves could be tougher than you expect, and those of us who paddle often have probably seen our fair share of unexpected heavy weather, wind, waves, rain, or even thunderstorms, requiring quick adjustments to your paddle plan and being a lot easier and safer to handle if you're prepared in advance. Fourth, bring proper paddle clothes and gear that protect you against cold, rain, wave splash, etc. This is of course key here, and I recommend to always bring a change of clothes, or, if they might be needed, reinforcement clothes for if things get colder or if the weather gets worse. These should be stored in a waterproof way, such as a dry bag. In cold conditions, things can get much chillier once you get up on land and are standing still rather than are out paddling and keeping warm by keeping active. Fifth, and particularly to the point of this video, to reiterate, be prepared for sudden weather changes. It might not at all be what you expected, and strong wind, tides you weren't taking into consideration, or weather changes such as rain or even thunder might punch a hole in the nicest of paddle plans. If you're out on a longer paddle, such as a full day or even an expedition of multiple days, it becomes particularly important to be prepared with proper gear, a safety mindset, and to plan your route in a smart way. But even a short paddle, like a few hours nice relaxed paddling on a beautiful lake, can turn really difficult really quickly if the weather turns against you. So what I, and basically most paddlers with a safety mindset, recommend is that you're always mindful and prepared. No need to stress about this, just have a good mindset that helps you to be prepared always. That way all your paddles basically become safer and more fun. Think about your paddle plan, bring the right gear, consider any dangers and pitfalls, and so on. Making this a habit will really ensure a much safer and better paddle experience if the weather suddenly does change. If you're ready for it and have warm and protective clothing, a rainstorm, or like we had yesterday, a hailstorm, as long as it's small and not dangerous hail like here, can actually be kind of fun instead of really unpleasant. Finally, if you're heading out, it's always a good idea to let someone know your paddle plan. When are you leaving? Where are you paddling? When are you expected to be back? If something happens and you end up being in trouble, someone back on land will be aware that you haven't returned and can call for help if needed. Yesterday's paddle trip was a really good example, I feel, and as I said, it was really appropriate for the search and rescue exercise we were part of as actors, including sea rescue units, and a quite special experience. Stay tuned here on the channel for more on that special experience going forward. Thanks to the Swedish Outdoor Association for organizing this opportunity, and the Swedish Sea Rescue Society for excellent response efforts during the exercise. In summary, in terms of good principles for staying safe and prepared for changes in weather as a paddler, check weather forecasts and consider wind, tides, air temperature, and water temperature. Adjust your paddle plan and route according to expected weather. To the extent possible, avoid having wind and tide against you on the way back, making for an easier and safer paddle trip. Bring proper safety gear appropriate for your paddle trip. Bring proper clothing, including spare and extra clothing, and be prepared for sudden weather changes. Have you had a paddle experience where the weather suddenly changed for the worse? Share your experience in the comments or in the Paddling Safety Facebook group. If you have any question, feel free to ask and I'll be happy to advise if I can. And many other highly knowledgeable paddlers out there might be happy to as well. Was there something you feel should be mentioned in addition to what I discussed in this video? Please share your thoughts as well. Let's all stay safe together as a paddling community. And as I always say, stay safe out there and happy paddles. Thank you for watching.